Now we're on our last example of using the OpenAI API. We're going to do classification. So if you haven't already done so, make sure you add the OpenAI API key into your environment variables before running this. If you haven't done so, you can go to the translation example and walk through that. We set the OpenAI API key in that video. And once you have done so, we are ready to get started with the classification section. So I have the example script that I created for this lecture, and I'm going to open up in Sublime Text, which is my text editor, and let's open it up. So we are providing two different ways of doing this, and we are going to be doing classification in the context of sentiment analysis. So walking through this, we have the OpenAI API key already imported, and we provide example one, which is using chat completion in order to provide few-shot prompting to create some sort of understanding of what is being done in order to get a response. So what a great title is positive, what bad movie is negative, what time should we see the bad movie is negative, and this is all the system prompts. And then we can say, wow, I had a great time in the movie, is it positive or negative? And then we'll print it out. Example two, we're using one-shot, zero-shot prompting, where we just provide a question and then we get an answer. And the third one is we're providing our slang understanding and seeing how few-shot prompting can change a response. So one important thing to know here is that chat completion can be zero-shot prompting if we take out the system messages, and completion can be few-shot prompting if we provide a longer prompt with a few examples. So we should remember that none of these APIs are set to only do one thing. If you choose the chat completion API, you can also use chat completion with zero-shot prompting. Likewise, with completion, you can choose a prompt with few-shot prompting by providing the examples in the prompt previously. So let's go ahead and run this and just see what it prints out. So I'm going to run Python 3 classification.py, and then we can see that all of these are described as positive. So the first one is positive, which is referencing example one, which doesn't provide any sort of few-shot examples. The second one is positive, which is using the completion API. And then the third one is statement would typically be negative because ill is often used to describe something of poor quality or unfavorable. But in this case, it's saying it's typically considered negative, but it is not 100% negative because in this case, we are stating that the word ill is considered positive. So this is an example of how the few-shot prompting influenced the final decision. So you can play around with this and change some more things. Like, for example, you can say what a bad movie is positive, and then what time should we see the bad movie is positive. So, and then we can change the great movie to negative. So let's see what this changes. You can play around with it just by adding a few other things. Doesn't necessarily change the output, because if the training has predominantly made great a positive connotation, then a few new words won't influence the chat so much that it will actually name it negative. But for example, if we add a lot of shots, maybe it will, maybe it won't. It's hard to tell because a lot of this is probability. So the main takeaway is that we can use few-shot and zero-shot prompting with both APIs, but few-shot prompting is not a surefire solution in order to get the answer that we want. Sometimes it still is already having a knowledge base that's so strong that it's hard to override, but few-shot prompting can provide guidance into the direction that we want. So that's it. Let's move on to the next section.